talk about Strut, which is an art piece I did in 2009. I'm not quite on board with it. I'm pulling it up because I want to look at it as I talk about it so I can kind of express my feelings about it. And I've been working on an art page, and I'm going to do this where each one's dedicated to that piece. And I talk about it. You have it non-sound for your TV so you can pull it up as an art piece and help with your decor. And then I'm going to talk about each one on video and on podcast. Well, the gist of this is the only piece that I'm actually going to play some background music in. No, Bob Seger did not give me permission to play that, okay? But it is speaking of what is going on the internet and with digital art. And that's why I did it, okay? I love that song. I love Bob Seger. I grew up in the 80s. I don't know anybody that didn't love him. But um, if I get demonetized on some of this for actually playing that as background music, I'll understand because I get it. And this is kind of what this art piece is talking about for me is I get it, but people don't get it. But they like it, but they don't get it. They love it, but they don't love it. They take it and they use it for their own expression, but they don't get the gist of it. Okay, this is a pure fractal, and it was done in a program, and I don't know which program. I didn't write this down as I went. I wished I had of. I did write, kind of keep track of what I was listening to when I did the piece, and that was, and I'm gonna show who, because I'm a big fan of rock music. But the gist of this piece, it's a 3-piece series, kind of speaks of that rock mentality going on in the digital art world today. And this is what it's talking about, what I'm trying to express, that it's on the edge, it's edgy, and especially fine art. And it is a fine art, just like rock music was a music. It was in a class by itself. And if you look back, I compare a lot. I'm a big music fan. So, not maybe a TV fan or necessarily a movie fan, but I'm a big arts buff and I'm a big music buff. So, and back in the day when the rock albums, I mean, that was what I aspired to be. I wanted to be that woman that actually did design the rock covers and stuff. I wanted to be that person. And literally, if you kind of look over the stuff that I've done, it's all geared to, could I make a rock album out of it, or could I, or not a rock album, be on the cover of a rock album. And this is kind of, this piece, this series kind of speaks of all of it. And that particular song, I was going into a situation in my life where I knew when my grandma passed that I was on my own. She was pretty much the biggest backer and believer in me, and everybody else is kind of they come and go. But she was always the steady rock in my life, and that song in particular speaks into, I knew I was going into a period of my life where I was on my own, that I was not going to get the emotional support that I needed, and that I had 3 kids. Okay, so this particular piece is the center of that, and that song in particular, talks about independence and, having to strut your stuff, and me getting on social media and, collecting all these important people in our area and trying, get them all on board for this. This is going to be huge. We all, kind of deal. And wanting to set the example of, this is yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna strut once a day, and I'm gonna post this something. I got it in my mind this because I knew this is what works in the internet world. That you have to be consistent. You have to post and be regular about it. And with doing art and posting something every day is hard. Okay, that to do a traditional piece, just a drawing, takes me minimum 8 hours. Okay, so this was going to be a time consuming chore thing. And digital art, I ran across fractal art during this time, and this was all coming together. So this is about speaking, the little series is about, mom supporting her three youngins, and, how art was fractal, well, not fractal art, traditional digital art worlds at the time still colliding over this, them not seeing as a real art because, you had all these desktop publisher type people that were taking other people's art and calling it, publishing a calendar or whatever and calling it their own. I made this. Well, yeah, you did a layout, okay, but you didn't you did art, but you didn't, kind of deal is. And I'm real judgy about this as far as, even of myself, because to me, this piece, I didn't do the art. To me, I did, but I didn't is kind of the deal. Going into the fractal stuff, this was during a time period I was switching over from Corel because the naysayers had adopted Photoshop. So I was having to learn Photoshop at the same time. So this whole year was just, me exploring the tools and what could Photoshop do and how was it different. And the other thing was I went from using Corel Draw, which was my main program, to actually doing a photo, working with the photo part of these programs. So I was switching over from one main program to the other, and I was switching from the drawing side of it to the photo side of it, and what the differences were. And the gist of it is, this time period was grieving and being independent, but it was also what was rolling around in my mind is digital art really wasn't being accepted the way it should in the art world. And I wanted to correct that there was such a thing as fine art in the digital world, not just traditional. So we're all on the same page, I hope, that art's important. If you're not, you're probably in the wrong company, because I'm very proactive. Arts can make a huge difference in a person's life, and it did mine. And it's not something I want to see go away. And while I've had to learn tech, I think though that tech and art should be married in a way, and are, that people don't quite get it, that you know before art in the tech world, you just had DOS, which was, very time consuming, frustrating. Trying to even program your checkbook on it was a pain. And this art piece in particular kind of speaks to, it pulls all my, rock chick, independent, business. And so that song was the perfect song to be playing in the background, because I literally knew I was going to have to get on here and do this consistently on social media, and that it was going to be time consuming. The piece itself is kind of the same vibe as that song, and that's the vibe that was going on for me when it was made. It's not just supposed to be, you know, abstraction, talking about, you know, micro, you know, cells and all that, or science or any of it, but it speaks of how digital art really, like rock music, wasn't accepted by, you know, certain distributors, or there's a story about, you know, how certain record companies tried to prevent rock music, that the leader of that distributed music and had control TV and kind of radio weren't on. They didn't like it. They saw it as a fad, as a, you know, a you know, something that was going to come and go, and teenagers liked it, but everybody else. But here's the thing: digital art is very, very much accepted by the masses. Okay, just like rock music was. So this whole edgy, on the edge, one of the pieces I think is called that. I'll get into it as I go along, but just like rock music, it's edgy. Fractal art, especially, because it's talking about science, it's talking, you know, it's speaking about, you know, some of it can look very spiritual, some of it, you know, just like any kind of art, can speak to on many different levels. This in particular is, it speaks, supposed to, I hope, speak about the edgy tech, fine art, and science, all of it kind of rolled into one, and having sometimes to be independent of major institutions to progress. I mean, we'd be in the dark ages on some of this. And that's kind of how you know, rock music, they were the rebels, and, you know, they were starting their own thing and going out there and, you know, doing this with or without other people's permission. And this is kind of what this piece is. I'm going to do art with or without your permission. I'm going to show you how it should be done. And, or at least in that day and age, video wasn't real heavy at that point. I didn't have the time to invest in it, you know. So, but I did see where it was going, and, you know, I thought it was really important that, you know, family get involved, because we have a small business, and, you know, so it wasn't just about art for me. It was about, it's a statement about that whole thing, that, you know, this is fine art. And it actually, at the time, you know, a lot of decorating was black and white and modern and sleek and raw, and, you know, so this is all of that combined, and the gradient in it, you know, was hard to come by, you know. And from my point of view, artistically, because when you only have a color palette of 256 colors, to be able to go to making something that beautiful, classic black and white with the sheen and gradient, and it, you know, making it beautiful, you know, it was a statement of how far we've come artistically, you know, as far as, you know, the digital age. And it's still not being, and the reason it's called Strut, I had, you know, I kind of grew up around, well, once I left home, um, common everyday worker, a lot of auto workers in our area. I was married to one, and he was a welder, and that is kind of, you know, I knew I wasn't going to get any support for him. We're divorced. So, you know, this is kind of, this is me all rolled up into kind of one deal. I'm edgy, I'm a rock chick, I'm independent, I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet, but I also know, and it speaks of kind of the, you're an individual, but you're also connected to others and have responsibilities to others. And to me, you know, I was going into this, um, wanting to show people that it isn't all just cutesy, MySpace, sparkly stuff, that there is such a thing as fine art in the digital art community, and I wanted to share that with others. And as I go into this on each piece, I'll share more about it, but this one is really meant to show my individuality as a person. It's black and white. It's very scorpion when I'm not scorpion type feel to it. If you're into astrology or any of that. But it's really supposed to speak of being an individual while being connected and related to others. And this particular one, you could be standing up for others. And, you know, there was, I'm sure, somewhere in the history books, you know, everybody was at the time when Elvis came out going, ah, no, the powers that be, they didn't want to get off the gravy train. This guy had obviously hit a gold mine or streak, and, you know, unless they got a part of the money train, they weren't involved in it. And this is kind of how I feel sometimes about digital art is it's a very just being an artist in general is a very independent thing to be. And it's hard to make it, and it's hard to be disciplined, but I knew that both webmaster or programmer or artist, that it's something that you have to be dedicated to and do every day and get good at. And going into learning this new software and the social thing blowing up and new business starting, this is the statement. Okay, and this is what I want this piece, I hope this piece speaks to others about, is being an individual and having to go out and conquer the world. And sometimes it's an edgy place to be and not easy to do, to stand against, you know, say, the gallery thing that used to be so important to our time, like in the 80s, going and getting a degree in the arts, you weren't going to get a job if you didn't do it. And this is all that whole, there's a whole string of history of rock musicians that they didn't get the degree and they fought the currents and they still got on top. And that's the attitude that I was going to have to take. And that is, it's just kind of integrated, the little rebel in me, integrated part of myself that knows no matter how connected you are to others, that you have to be your individual self and too. And kind of stand up for that. In the same process, and this is why I made it a series, is sometimes you get hurt along the way. You're going to get cut or, bleed a little or put in the grind. And I felt like I have put in the grind. And I'd put it in at that time period and I invested in it and everything. Doing digital art isn't cheap, and that's kind of why I question why it's so underpaid. And I'm already speaking too long about this, so I may even have to start over about this. I'm starting over. So I'm not starting over. I'm just going to finish up. This one's probably never going to make it to DeviantArt. Or maybe I'll have to do it a little bit more. I didn't actually think I could talk that long about one piece, but, this particular one, really, it's meant to talk about everything on a level. You have your physical being, you have your spiritual being, you have your connection and your belonging to others. But, full, you know, enlightenment is the awareness that you're an individual and you can stand alone. And this is kind of what it's talking about in the whole series as a whole. You know, I have gotten meleeed emotionally, or, you know, been through some things that, you know, kind of opened me up like a can opener, and I'll talk about that in on one of the other pieces, you know. But going down the fractal rabbit hole, as I like to talk about it, is, you know, what you're doing when you look at something going down one of these programs, or at least I did, was, you know, you're looking at this huge blanket of just geometry type sacred. You know, this is what sacred geometry talks about. You're looking at it at a microscopic level, and you have the awareness that you are a cell, yet you're all these cells, and you're a being, and then that you have a spiritual side to this, a scientific side to it as well. In talking about the piece, it's supposed to be a marriage of all these different things, and it speaks a lot of our times, and a lot on, you know, just being a human being. That's kind of where I was going with this piece, and I kept it very black and white because, you know, to a lot of people, the world is black and white. You're either for or against, and I'm usually kind of somewhere stuck in the middle, trying to get two sides to work together, or, you know, come together. And that's kind of what I was feeling like by pulling, you know, there's, like with this situation in the family business, you know, my two sisters, I love them, but, you know, fight with them because we're siblings, sort of deal, was these two sisters kind of go at each other, and sometimes me pulling myself out of the equation made them work together, which they needed to, you know, to for us all to do what we were good at. And that's the other piece with the three in it, is kind of, you know, talking about, I have three children, I have two siblings, there's three of us, and we were the survivors. And some of this particular strut is talking about go out and do what you are good at. And I am good at art, but I don't think I'm the best ever or anything like that. And I don't even, there's a part of me going, this is original, but yet there's a part of it that speaks to the whole, and is very it's selfless, but it's selfish, but it's selfless, because some of it is, you know, I got on MySpace where everybody is using these, and I hate to say it, crappy graphics. And, you know, that, you know, very, well, not crappy, I'm not going to say crappy, tacky, maybe, some novelty graphics, and got on there and going, no, nope, we need to show the fine art, you know, because a lot of that particular platform was being able to, that social platform was being able to express your individuality. Well, I got on there and took a look around and said, we need to show the fine art of this, not just the novelty part of this, because that's why everybody seems to take it for granted, and why art institutions aren't necessarily accepting this as an art form. They see it more of an advertising novelty thing, and it's not going away. It's a gear just like, you know, rock is. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and we're keeping it. You know, and my generation very much says that, no, no, this is important to us. And there's a, you know, you're not going to take the fact that I'm a music buff out of my personality. So, you know, to me, getting on here at the time was wanting to marry that to what I was doing to, you know, there's an artist on here that talks about, you know, she visualizes music, and there's a part of me that kind of does that as well. She said they talk about it like it's a disability. To me, being able to visualize music in some form is not a disability, it's a gift. And that's so I wanted to be able to promote musicians at the time because they were getting hit hard by the internet and not getting paid, and wanting to people to acknowledge these folks, and these people are, you know, the pillars of us, and you respect them. You know, the guy that made the Muppets had passed, and I was kind of passing around, you know, some Kermit memes, and, you know, acknowledging other artists behind me and musicians. And so I did make a point of dedicating each piece to an artist as I went along. And then, you know, one of the art sites kind of, no, don't do that, because you don't want to step on their rights. And it's having gone through it myself, to not to the degree they do with the fandom, there's some, you know, happy medium to this where you can share with it. And I've had to process this over myself, over, you know, how do you do this, and, you know, be happy people are using your stuff, and glad about it, and not mad about not getting paid or blah blah blah, and them not recognizing it as an art form, or seeing it as something more important, not seeing the whole of it. You know, I did get invited to an art show that spring, you know, kind of acknowledging that digital art is an art form, and a person wanting to make a statement about that. So they used me because mine is fine art. And each part of art is different. You know, design is they both have different reasons. These pieces were done specifically fine art to express myself in a world where I didn't feel like I could talk about what I was really feeling or going on with me, but a way to still be able to express myself. And art has always done that for me. And that's what these pieces talk about, different levels of expression, different, you know, techniques, you know, that we've come this far, that we've got a long way to go. And that's kind of what my art show was about. This is where we're at. I can print it up for you now, which was a huge, huge milestone in the art community, our digital art community, that we're finally being able to take our digital art and put it on a canvas so people could understand this is real fine art, you know, but kind of being minimized by some of the art world as just generative art is insulting. You know, there's some I don't like it. I'm gonna find the right name for this to honor it but not minimize it, kind of deal. I just keep calling it fractal art, and it's not just fractal art. There was a lot of shading, layers to this. This one is very simple. It was simple, and it was kept simple for a reason, just to show how beautiful digital art can be, even if at the microscopic level. But this is what the piece is about, and I hope that gives you some insight into it. and into me, and makes you appreciate it all the more. But it is really, a stance kind of piece that, I got to stand up for myself. I got to stand up for my family as a whole and the community, as a small business. And then I got to stand up in the art world and say, this is fine art. Acknowledge it, please. Not all of it is. Some of it is just cheesy, but a lot of it is fine art. And don't deny us anymore. So we need the right name for it. I don't think generative art is a good name for it. And I kind of got on a kick one day when I was kind of processing how I'm going to put this all back together and lay this portion project to its final rest is, what do you call it? And, some of them are calling it cyber art. Some of them are I don't like that word either. Cyberpunk, um, fractal, psychedelic, which is you know, and some of it, one person had said to me, and this is why I kept silent about what the pieces were supposed to be conveying or saying, or I wanted just to be able to get the feedback from people on the pieces. And one of them said, well, a lot of this is you're bringing me back to better days, growing up, and it's very reminiscent. And some of this is about, you know, particularly 80s kids, or, I don't know what we are. We're not the baby boomers. We're Generation X or whatever. This is kind of, you know, what our generation was about. We wanted the details. We wanted to get to the, you know, we didn't want this supernatural to seem, so mysterious anymore. Or, you know, we grew up in coming off, a culture that was kind of paranoid about, men in black and, you know, CIA, FBI, and, who's spying over your shoulder, to being able to actually fully express ourselves again. Because, rock kids are all about that. I'm going to express how pissed I am to you. But this is just classic, and it goes back to, and I kept it black and white. And I shaded it in different colors, and I was like, no, I'm sticking to black and white on this. And keeping it as pure fractal as I can without too many layers in what I was putting together, because I wanted to harking back to the good old days in rock and roll where they were fighting the system, or classic black and white TV that had been forgotten. And and looking back on that era, this is the era that we're in. Someday somebody is going to look back at this time of period and go, you know the bobbleheads, how they got popular for a while, that was trendy and fatty. I wanted this to be a classic piece that stood the test of time, that and it be a statement about myself, in a sense, that, standing the test of time. And as many critics as there were back in the day, they were the trend, not the actual rock musicians. They stood the test of time. And, Bob Seger, definitely classic rock and roll, stood the test of time. We've listened to it for 20 some odd years. Beatles, certain, because it has that classic mentality that speaks to you and other generations, not just now. So, this looked good 10 years ago, and it was a statement about, dude, we can do so much more than this. You got, this is where we've come, and this is where we can go. Because, as I spoke in a prior podcast, that, the digital cards are here, and they're going to get so much better. So just think of where the fine art's going to go then. But a lot of this is just standing up for yourself and standing up for what you believe in, and what's important to you. And those things were art and family to me, and myself included, that I matter too. So and as you'll see, there's one piece that talks about spirituality and as well. So, this is why I put them all together, because it's supposed to, these three, and I kept them all classic black and white, so, they could have that timelessness to them, that it's going to be just important as the day I made it, 10, 20, 30, 60 years out. But that's, and what I've ran across is trying not to destroy what was made. It's kind of, and digital art is even more delicate than painting, because you can easily lose it and it crumble quickly. And I've had that experience, you know, trying to preserve something is hard. And it's hard in traditional art, but traditional art needs to appreciate that it's even harder in the digital world, because it can be so easily lost, in our day and age, and erased and done away with. And it's kind of, and this is why I say it speaks of death and human frailty as well, because we're here one day and gone the next. So that's what this series, this 3 pieces, is about. This particular piece is about being the individual in this, and the next, I'm not sure which one comes next. I'll have to look, but one speaks about being a female in this, and the other speaks of group and belonging. So that's the wrap up on Strut and the story behind it. Hope you enjoyed it. I really hope that we get to the point that you can directly put this on your TV screen. If not, if you're interested in the piece, you can print it up. I recommend I have different levels. You can print it up fine art museum quality, or you can print it up just regular everyday Joe Blow, or there's budget option for that. I also have it where you can by the end of the day, should have it where you can download it, where it just fits your phone and it is not decreasing the value of my art piece, or you can just put it on your computer screen. So I'm going to have it in different options for you, and it is also available if you'd like to buy it out, like an art piece would be bought out, where you can do that. You can buy the piece, and I will take it down from each art site, and you will own it. It will be, the copyright will still be mine, but you will own it, and won't be sold to anybody else from that point on, digitally. So if you're interested in doing that, you can inbox me. It's not going to be cheap for that. Just what I'm telling you is there's different routes to go and different price points, and I can meet each one of those depending on, what you're interested in. So that's the gist of it, and I got to get into getting this posted and put together the way I think it should be put together in this day and age. That you have all these different options. I hope they don't overwhelm you. We'll get more into next piece tomorrow. I'm going to do this series, and then I'm going to have a space where I can up my game to being more like in my studio, where I'm and it all comes together, and I can present this to you quickly. It's not a quick process. I talked an hour and a half ahead of this piece, just explaining the project to begin with as a whole, and then obviously I talk in depth about this particular piece in the series. So it's time consuming to put, and that's the other thing that I want this piece to talk about or express, that digital art just isn't as quick as ever. I put probably 8 hours into this prior to it ever going into the digital stream. Um, Not even stream at that time. It was just posting on one art site and then deciding to, well, I like this one and I want to put it there. My particular pieces were meant to be on your TV screen or printed on all out graphics. 10 years ago, I went looking. There was one press in the United States that did that, and they didn't offer to do these print on demand things. So it's a real overcoming odds piece and story about the project and this piece in particular, because like I said, there were things that were holding artists back digitally, and you couldn't do that I wanted done. In particular with my artwork, I wanted it to be on art grade canvas, not just cheap canvas. I wanted it to be able to be printed on a t-shirt the way it should be printed on a t-shirt, and not just a cheap one, because all print t-shirts aren't cheap, and all over graphic t-shirts, that's what they're calling them, they aren't cheap. And this is the kind of digital art that I did a decade ago, and we're just now getting to the technology where I can actually do the all print graphic t-shirt the way this was meant to be. I can actually hopefully get it to your TV screen and still be able to, say, listen, you got to pay me. And this is all this piece talks about, is me as an individual, as an artist, and well, an individual period in being a part of society. So that's the gist of it. Get a hold of me. Let me know what you think, how you like the layout, or how I'm putting this together. If you have any ideas that could go with it as well. I pretty much feel like I'm beating a dead horse. And I know other artists felt like that, maintaining their stuff, so I'm not alone in that. But have patience with me as I go through the series. I don't intend to talk an hour about each piece. Like I said, I want to try and keep them under 12. And tips are appreciated, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.